You're listening to NYCC Me, a podcast on all things diversity and inclusion. Every episode, we speak openly and honestly with colleagues and guests, sharing knowledge, personal stories, struggles and successes. If you want to know more about NYCC's diversity and inclusion journey and what it means for you, then stay tuned. Thank you for joining the 5th episode of NYCC Me. On this episode, we're shining a light on Global Accessibility Awareness Day, which comes every third Thursday of May annually. So this year it falls on the 20th of May. And to mark this day, I'm joined by Cath Ritchie, David Edwards and Robert Ling. And so I'd just like ask them to introduce themselves, please. David, starting with you, please.
Okay, so I'm David Edwards. I work in T&C. So I'm part of the office productivity team, and I update the guidance. I deliver training sessions, and I also, another part of my work is accessibility as well.
Thank you. And Cath?
Yeah, hi, I'm Cath Ritchie. I'm a business relationship manager working in T&C. And so work across all the different departments, but one of my sort of key interests and focus areas is around equalities and how that relates to technology.
Thank you. And last but not least, Robert.
Hi, I'm Robert Ling, Assistant Director of Technology and Change, and I'm responsible for customer services, IT, projects and programmes, and the Change programme.
Thanks, Robert, and thank you all for joining this podcast. It's really great to have you on and have your expertise as well. Just a little bit of background about Global Accessibility Awareness Day. So it's an awareness day focusing on digital access and inclusion for the more than 1 billion people with disabilities and impairments around the world. So I guess to start off, what is digital accessibility, I guess, from a more technical standpoint? I don't know who would like to kind of take that on first.
Well, I don't mind going first. I'm sure we've all got answers for that, or different versions of the same answer. But yeah, digital accessibility is the digital bit is talking about kind of websites and the tools on the web that people use, and accessibility is about us getting to use them. And really, accessibility applies to all of us. It isn't something special. It's about how every user, including those who might need some assistance to use a website, but it's really about how every single user can go on and understand what's being the information that's being transferred to them, so they can understand it, engage with it, and know what the messages are that we're trying to tell people. And then so that's the kind of our role as the people that might develop those digital tools. But there's also another part of it which is about the kind of core skills that you might need to find a website accessible. So you're going to have some level of comfort or confidence to turn on a computer or use your mobile phone in a different way so that you can go on that website and find that information. So there's something there about making sure accessibility is available to people as well.
Thank you, Cath.
Yeah, I'd probably like to add to that as well, because I think there's a point that Cath made around accessibility is for all, and I think that's sometimes that we've forgotten. I think we could probably all sit here and think about a service that we've used, a digital product that we've used that is just appalling, that you can't access it, you can't find what you're looking for, you can't utilize what it is. And that for me, I think, is the nub of accessibility. And I think when we start talking around the 1 billion people with disabilities, I think they have just an extra challenge around how we work through this. But there is a point that something that is well designed with accessibility at the heart of it is good for everybody.
Yeah, I would agree with that, because I think like just coming in there, ironically, I've got a team space called Accessibility for All. So just kind of mentioning that, really, we've got quite a few people in there where we're trying to reach out to them and trying to get a gauge in terms of what they might be struggling with or the needs that they have. And I find it really interesting in terms of that line of work, and sort of working with them and seeing what maybe requests or queries come up and come into us as well. And it really is, about sort of as Robert said, like having something in place which you know, at the very heart of it is designed to be accessible for everyone, is so much easier. Like not just those who might have those needs and might need additional support or help. But I think it's really, really interesting to sort of have something in place which fits pretty much every aspect or need, if you like, that's out there. But yeah, I think Teams is a really, really good example of that. You know, Teams has lots and lots of features. Obviously, we can mention this a bit later, but I think Teams is Microsoft Teams is really, really good in terms of, you know, the accessible features within it, which is really, really interesting. So
Thank you all for that. Just kind of, I guess, piggybacking on the point that David made on, you know, capturing those kind of cases and the different types of issues that people might face. I think for a lot of us, when we hear about digital accessibility, we don't necessarily, I guess, understand what that means in a real sense. So it'd be interesting, I guess, from a knowledge perspective, for myself and viewers to kind of know a bit more about what kind of accessibility issues might arise. You know, what are some common forms of, I guess, digital exclusion maybe that people might experience?
Yeah, I think so. AbilityNet, which is a really great website and really great organisation, but they talk about that web accessibility. It's not about disability, but it's about universality. So just making it the bigger, broader. The more people that can access it, the better. And there are so many different things that affect it. I know you could write a infinite list of things that might affect it, but it is things around like your environment. We all know now what it's like to work in a noisy home environment while trying to do your job. Like your age, the different languages that you speak, maybe some impaired mobility. But really simple things as well, like using different devices. I think most of us would have been on the same website on a laptop and then on a mobile, and it's a different experience. And we all have different times of our lives, we experience different things on the accessibility spectrum. So as we get older, or perhaps experience poor health, or even something like spraying your wrist, you've got to use your mobile with your other hand. It makes it so much harder. So the easier it is for everybody, the less impact those different needs will have.
Thank you. That's a really good, really interesting point. Definitely in terms of, I think it brings to home, I guess, the direct the experience, the lived experience side of things, which I think sometimes if we don't have, or if we can navigate, web pages and other digital platforms with ease, we might not necessarily, I guess, understand deeply how it can be really inaccessible for other people who are not the same as us, maybe older, maybe have an impairment and so on and so forth. So it's really great to kind of bring that home, and I guess it offers a bit of self-reflection for us all.
And I think just on that, Francesca, just come back in, is something you can really do is just have a go with the screen reader. I think most of us will have it on our phones. Just take, I found it quite quickly, and you can have a go and just look at a couple of different websites with it being read out to you. And my goodness, it makes a difference how that website is laid out. And it really brought it home for me just how different just looking at a website can be. It's worth giving it a go.
I think that's a really important point, and putting ourselves through that process, I think it does bring it home, which is why we do a lot of work around personas, both disabilities, accessibilities, and just everydays, is trying to draw out what our users look like, the challenges that they have, and then pushing ourselves to try and imagine what it's like from their point of view. So I think the point that Cath made around trying the screen readers is absolutely right. It's put yourself in somebody else's shoes and then try and work out how to do it.
Yeah, I think this is really important for lots of different people, even if we don't have specific needs, or just sort of for managers or for team leaders, or whoever, just to kind of have that awareness and being familiar with those needs. I've just been doing some some kind of work around sort of using an interpreter and how you would go about using an interpreter on a Teams meeting for those who might be deaf. And it's been really enlightening and really interesting at the same time in terms of how we would actually go about that. You know, sort of, yeah, as Cath says, like using screen readers, you know, and or even just pretend that, you know, we can't see, we can't hear, we can't have an actual sense, or maybe a sense that is missing, and we can, you know, just kind of imagine what we would do in that situation. And once we're at that point, we can then sort of think about you know, what we can improve on, maybe as a team, just trying to make things a little bit more accessible for people, really. And I think workflow is a really big one as well, in terms of, you know, many departments may have their own ways of working, you know, especially internally, and it might be traditional, you know, to do something in a particular way, but then it's thinking about maybe being a slightly open-minded in terms of, you know, if someone else wants to work a slightly different way, how they might interpret that and how they and what that looks like for them. So I find that really like an interesting angle to look at.
Thank you all for that really brilliant feedback, and I think, you know, a lot of that really does bring, I guess, to the importance of why Global Accessibility Awareness Day is so important and is something that should be noted and recognised and used as an opportunity to, I guess, educate a bit more and also engage with, you know, those that we work within NYCC, but also more externally. And I guess on the kind of topic of just general awareness, is there within your, you know, your own experiences within your work and the type of work that you do around digital accessibility, you know, any common misconceptions that people might have about accessibility, or what I guess maybe forms of documents are accessible versus not accessible, or all those kind of things? I see quite a few smiles there.
Yeah, I think we're smiling because PDF. PDF is, I think, the bane of our life. It's a brilliant document tool, but is not great on some of the accessibility. When you look at the corporate website, it scores really well until you see the accessibility around the amount of PDFs that we have on there, and it really drags down the score of the rest of the website. But that probably highlights an interesting challenge. So if you take our colleagues in planning, how do you identify and show to the general public a whole range of complex planning on a web page? And I think that's been quite an interesting battle. I think is how to convey the right messages with the tools that we have, and PDFs and planning, I think, is one of the bugbears that we have at the moment, that there isn't an easy solution, and working through the teams. Cath, I don't know if you've got more.
Yeah, well, I just think, yeah, I think the PDF is exactly why, because it is that real bugbear. But the problem is that most people don't know that it's a problem, and they just think, oh, I've got a leaflet, or it looks nice, and that's a great way of displaying it. And for most of us, we click on and we look at it and it's grand. But for some people, it's a real barrier. So I think the first sort of job is to get that message out there, and there's some sort of key things that you can do about making the layout navigatable in an easy way, and it, you know, the right kind of look and feel, but also not attaching PDFs and things like that. But I think the biggest misconception, I think, is that this is kind of someone else's job, that it's like maybe for the comms team to do, or digital services to do, or someone will fix it. But there's a real message that we need to kind of share, or kind of get people behind, which is, if you've got a page on a website that's talking about your service, then that's probably the first impression you make on that, for that person who's coming to find out about it. It's the first sort of, like, the handshake or the hello, or the, you know, if someone wants to find out about social care or potholes or whatever, the first thing they're going to look at is your webpage. And so that's part of your service delivery, it's part of your reputation, and so we need to all be responsible for that and make sure that it's right, and it's open, and that it's easy to read, and that everybody can access it.
And I think to build on that, I think it creates a real tension between what people feel is something there to show off what they're doing and how maybe visually stimulating that web page is compared to what the web page is there to do, which is to convey information. And I think that's one of the tensions that we often see. And I had a conversation a couple of months ago now where we were told that the website was really bland. But the point of the website is to convey information. You know, people come to the website to read it and understand it. And the discussion was around, well, it's not colourful enough and all the rest of it. Well, is that really what we're trying to do? And I think there's a really interesting balance between how you create visually stimulating digital products while also keeping it accessible and there to do what it's there to do, which is to convey information. I'm not sure people want to particularly hang around. They want to go get the piece of information and get about their day. Yeah. So it really starts to boil down to that approach to good design. And good design costs money, time, effort, but bad design costs us an awful lot more in the long tail of sorting out these issues. And I think that's part of the reason why we've got people like Cath leading on it, us, and the work that Dave is doing to really start to bring that home and make it much more forefront in people's minds.
Yeah, I think when we were talking about PDFs, I've got some design background anyway, and I think it just depends on where you come from in terms of you know the line of work, because if you speak to maybe a graphic designer, they'll be like, well, I want something in a PDF, I want something encapsulated, I want all my art and design in that PDF, and obviously that's great for that purpose, but what we're trying to say and what we're describing is obviously everyone accessing information, viewing maybe pictures in there as well. And if you think about the essence of a PDF, essentially you're bringing up the information along with the images or the visuals, but essentially you can't click on, or in most cases you can't really highlight text, you can't extract the images, and it's all encapsulated into one file, if you like. So it's obviously harder to negotiate and to actually read the text, especially if you have a screen reader as well, like Cath and Robert were saying. So having a screen reader really confuses, you know, well, having a PDF in place really confuses the screen reader, and you know, there's no way of applying an alt tag, speaking technically here, but you can't have alt tags on the images because they're encapsulated. And just with, you know, the website style that we were talking about, you know, it's in the design, and you go to many government websites or NHS websites, and they're quite, you know, they're maybe lacking in visual content, and maybe if you're going to send it to a design competition, it may lose, but that's not the point. It's actually, as Robert said, it's getting the information across, and in like if we can think about as many ways of getting that information delivered to someone through as many means as we can, then obviously that's more important than maybe slapping a good visual on as well. Obviously it looks good, but it might not be accessible for absolutely everyone, and that's, I think, the balance that Robert was trying to get at. And yeah, I find that a really interesting one. Just trying to keep that balance.
That's really interesting points that were just made, and I think, I mean, for me personally, I had no idea about PDFs until this point, and I think that is essentially indicative of the problem, isn't it? Is that so much about accessibility, either people, they don't know because they shy away from it in terms of digital accessibility. They don't know about it, so they shy away from it, and they're confused that it's going to be a bit too complex for them to really understand, so it's better to just not even dig that a little bit deeper. But in actuality, it's how we relate to other people, and it's our responsibility, especially if we're, you know, providing a service, that those service users can understand the information that they need to understand, and you know, the impact of that, if they don't receive that information, and can be so detrimental to people's well-being. And I guess that kind of leads on to the next question that I wanted to ask, which is, why should, if we're you know, obviously we're preaching kind of to the converted here, but why should other people take accessibility seriously, especially in NYCC? What does it mean for us as an employer, as a, you know, council, how we relate to our service users and how we relate to our staff members, to bring accessibility into the forefront? I don't know who wants to take that.
Well, I think I mean, Cath can follow up after me, but I think on a very basic level, there's a legal requirement for us to be accessible, and I think that's that's base camp really. We're actually going through an issue at the moment where we've been contacted because there's an element of the service that we deliver that isn't accessible, and how we sort that out is an interesting challenge. And for me, there's an irony that every time we've done a digital service, we've had an awful lot of people saying to us, but you can't do a digital service. You know, that cohort of people, they want to do face-to-face, they want to do this, they want to do that, and you almost get an upswell of reasons why you shouldn't be moving this service online. And actually what we've been caught by is a part of a service that is on the telephone, is face-to-face and isn't online, and the gentleman saying, I want to work online. And we have to, because that's the law. So we're getting ourselves sorted very quickly. It's a minor point, but it's a minor point in the grand scheme of things. It's not a minor point to that gentleman. It's a massive point, and it's our job to sort it out. But that's the first point. I think Cath and David will probably come on some of the more interesting reasons.
And I think, like you say, like the legality of it is the sort of base camp. And then the absolute pinnacle of it is summed up as a BBC video of somebody talking about using a screen reader, and he'd been blind since birth. And I'm going to read a quote because I can't remember things. I'm going to read it. It says, technology provided for me what medical breakthroughs couldn't. And the very fact that we can enable people so amazingly well by using technology in the right way, that's like the inspiration, where the baseline is the kind of, we've got to do it. It's legal. It's the right thing to do as well, but it's the legal protection. There's also a way of absolutely giving people freedom and their own independence, and technology can do that. And then there's this whole middle ground where we can't escape technology. It's absolutely part of what we do and why we do. It's completely intertwined with our home lives, our work lives, and everything. And if we don't get tech right, then we don't work as an organisation, because it's part of every single thing that we do.
Yeah, I think just going on that point really, I think we can think it's, you know, everything's in place, everything's okay because I can read stuff, I can do things, but as we were talking about before, you know, it might not be the same for everyone. And obviously we can do our part, and I think it's just raising awareness and making people aware of the fact that we can do something about how we maybe if we're uploading images on websites, we can, you know, we can definitely tie into people using screen readers. We can, you know, make it more accessible by the colors we choose, the text we choose. I think there's a whole range of different things that we do on a daily basis, and as I was saying before, in terms of our workflow, maybe we use Arial with 12 font every single day because that's just the way we do things, or whatever. But that's just an example. We might do things just over and over again and not really think about, you know, why. But I think it's just, you know, coming up with this, you know, sort of raising this awareness of there's many things that we can change and alter very, very slightly. It might only be like a small or slight change, But if we're all doing that, then and also all aware of what impact that might have in terms of improving, accessibility for everyone, then obviously, it's win-win for everyone, really.
Yeah.
Thank you all for that brilliant feedback. And actually, David, what you were kind of saying relates, I guess, to the next question, which is, I guess, to take away from this conversation that we've had and some of the awareness raising, what are some small ways that we can kind of impart into our lives to make a bit of a difference in terms of accessibility? I mean, it could be stop using PDFs where then, where there's other options available. But is there anything that you can think of that would be beneficial to try and push accessibility forward? I don't know who wants to take it.
I think it's just engaging with it, and I think it starts with listening to podcasts like this, and there's going to be articles on the internet and all sorts around Global Accessibility Awareness Day. But it's just noticing, and I think once you start to notice, you really notice a lot more. So you can start to kind of look at the world around you, the digital world. There's loads of information about like what the rules and regulations are and how to get this right, and there's loads of support. And you look on our website, there's a bit on the bottom where it says accessibility, you click on there, there's loads of information about that. But I think the biggest thing we can do is to sort of step out of our comfort zone. And I think whatever service you work in, wherever you are, we all speak our own language and speak on our own terms, and we are kind of biased to that worldview, and that's fine because that's our predominant worldview that we see all the time. But we do get quite biased and quite insular. All of us do. I'm sure T&C can be accused of that occasionally, and I'm sure most services can be as well. So we need to think about how it works outside of our world. And I know in T&C we're setting up quite a few groups and networks, and we're linking in with yourself, Francesca, to make the impact of that kind of across the organisation. But we really want to hear from kind of real people. And we talked earlier in the podcast, didn't we, about imagining what it feels like to have a sensory loss or something like that. But beyond that, there's nothing more powerful, is there, than the authentic voice. So we're going to set up some networks so we can actually hear from people and say, what does this look like, and which website works for you better, or which display, and include in that all sorts of different kinds of people and anyone that wants to get involved. And we've also got a equalities group in technology and change, and it's a very informal group, but it creates a space to challenge ourselves and be self-critical, and just bring ideas and concerns. And I think the key thing for me after all that waffle would be allowing the time to challenge, make the space for it, and just be open to the sense that not everybody experiences things in the same way that you do.
Thank you so much.
I'd probably echo everything that Cath said. I think it's putting yourselves in those environments, in those shoes, and trying to think of what it'd be like. I mean, YouTube is full of fails around accessibility, so it's worth looking at those. I mean, I was on Twitter last week and watching some lady post videos of people eating and drinking outside, which, as we're coming out of COVID, and that comment's just dated this podcast. But as we come out of COVID and people have been eating outside, everyone's delighted, and the cafes and everyone are making space for everyone. And then this wheelchair user said, well, where am I supposed to go? And you watch the video of them trying to get down the street, and how many people have actually stopped and thought, because I, like everyone else, probably thought, it's great, these cafes are opening out on the pavements, and then there's some poor soul who has to try and push their way past them all, and it all becomes very difficult and inconvenient. So I think putting yourselves in those shoes, having a look online, there's a lot of resources, contacting teams across the council. I mean, there's a corporate accessibility group as well, and just talk about it. And engage with it. And I think that's the main thing, engage with it and start somewhere, and then keep iterating and keep making it better, but start somewhere and start a discussion.
Yeah, I I broke my foot in 2015, and I had to be in a wheelchair, and my whole life kind of changed for that period of time, and it really opened my eyes, just like the thing that Robert was talking about, and I was like, for once in my life, drop curbs was a massive thing. Trying to find drop curbs, and then thinking, why doesn't, why don't people put drop curbs in the curb there, just to bump myself up onto the path. So there's many things that sort of, until we're in that situation, it's hard to imagine what it's like for those people. It's hard to imagine what it's like for other people, being maybe not in their shoes, but maybe imagining what it is like for those other people. And I think what we can do is think about what we have got, in terms of, if we do have any needs, we can reach out, and we do have a host of different tools in Microsoft, and I know Microsoft 365, really big thing. Most people have it now, and it's a new way of working. But I think, just like accessibility, give it a go. I think Microsoft, has so many features built into it, which I'm still learning personally as well, in terms of the way in which Microsoft is trying to embed things, to make things more normal, I guess, and accessible for people. Just like maybe the dictation tool in Microsoft Word. If you use Microsoft Word and bring it up in Teams, you can use the dictation tool to just speak into your microphone, select your microphone, and then you can speak. But there's many things like this where I think we just raising awareness, basically, of being aware of those things already in place, the things that we already have, and then we're here if you need help in terms of any needs that you might needing to be met. We're obviously here to help you along. And with the work that I do as well, I sort of see myself as almost like a liaison between those who need help and sort of getting help for them as well, and that's working really well. And the feedback that we're having is really positive in the way that we are trying to find solutions for them that come to us, and T&C as a whole. And there are systems in place in which to deliver. Maybe it is software that you need, maybe it is a tool that you need. If it isn't something that we have, obviously we can have that conversation, but I think it's definitely having that conversation between departments, and seeing how we can maybe improve if we need to. And definitely having that conversation about raising awareness and making sure that we are doing all we can to bring these things to the forefront, if you like, and whether it's devices or even maybe, I don't know, comprehending things or whatever it might be. And maybe it might be something physical, maybe a physical impairment. Then obviously there's a process in for that as well that we can obviously help with. So I wouldn't feel afraid to get in touch if you do need any help or support. Just get in touch with us, and we'll try our best to help best as possible.
Thank you. That's brilliant. And I guess just on a closing note, if I was someone to be watching this right now and think that actually I have experiences that I would like to share, that maybe I haven't been able to access the support I need, or maybe I have and I would like to relay that, how would I go about doing that? Who would I be in contact with?
Well, I'll do a plug for one of the networks that we're trying to set up. Carol James is setting from the digital services team is setting up we're calling a co-design community. So it's basically a group of people. It's internal to begin with, but we'd like to roll this model out to work out with people out in the community as well, so that you can just feed in your point of view. So it's not about sitting in a workshop for 4 hours, but it is just about saying, this is what I think about this, this is what I think about that. So on the 25th and the 28th of May, there's a couple of sessions where she would like people to come along just for a kind of meet and greet and say, how do you think that might work? What's the best way to make sure that when we are designing things or we are rolling things out, that we incorporate your voices as actual experts in what it feels like to use those services? So yeah, a shameless plug for that.
That's brilliant. A great plug. And I know Dave. Oh, sorry. Go on, Robert.
Well, I was going to say, if people really are struggling and you know, they've attended the workshops and they still need something, they can always drop an email. So, you know, send an email to myself or anyone on the podcast really, and we can help direct. I think the question is just to reach out. There's a lot going off, and it's just making those connections for people. So if you've searched Yammer, you've searched the internet, and you're still not getting what you need, then send us an email.
Yeah, I would definitely agree. I mean, it's finding that maybe safe space if you're feeling a bit anxious, especially at this time where, you know, as Robert says, lots of things are going on at the moment. There's a lot of uncertainty. There's a lot of things that are unknown, and just sort of having that space, I guess. That's why I thought, you know, having accessibility for all, the team space, reach out to that and be a part of that, where you have that space as an interim to basically voice your thoughts, voice your opinions, and then we'll try our best to, you know, find a solution for you, and if it's practical help, obviously, as I said before, we can obviously help with that as well. But I think there's something around feeling together, a sense of togetherness, isn't there, where you know, if you are struggling, there's you can't really beat being with those who are also maybe of the same mind frame, and I think it's really important to reach out, and if you are struggling, just to see, you know, there's always the Yammer, so going over to Yammer and looking up the disability group on there, and also there's other groups on there as well that will be able to help you, and we'll make the link available as well for the Accessibility for All team, so we'll be able to link you in with that as well. But as Robert says, just send an email if you can't find anything on the internet or on the website or whatever, and just see, just basically that would be what I would say. Just send an email or a message if you are in need. I wouldn't want anyone to kind of, you know, sort of go without if they're, you know, if they are struggling, or if you are struggling and going through maybe work or whatever, and you're sort of going, okay, where do I go now, kind of thing, because being in that situation, I can imagine can be quite difficult, if you're trying to reach out and people seem to have everything they need and you might not. So I think just kind of reach out wherever you can, and hopefully this will hopefully help you.
Hopefully. Thank you all so much for this. I think this has been a really brilliant conversation and really raised, you know, a lot of awareness, hopefully. And I really hope anyone with any questions or anything, feel free to engage either directly to yourselves, as you said, but also comment on the video, comment on the YouTube, and share amongst your colleagues and so on and so forth. Just, I guess, a final note, just because I ask in most of the episodes, is there any final takeaways that you would like people watching to take with them, or I guess like a key point you would like to remain in people's minds as this podcast comes to an end? No one's take on for that, Cath.
Well, I think for me it is just about that accessibility is for everybody. It isn't a specialist. We might have at times made it sound complicated today, or complex, or a little bit overwhelming, but accessibility is just about making it nice to use. So it's win-win if we can get it. The better we can make it, it's win-win for everybody. We can do our job, which is to get information to people about the services that we provide. So it really is the best thing for everybody.
What Cath said.
Short and sweet. Definitely from what we've said today, I suppose thinking about accessibility and what it really is, and what we can do ourselves to make things accessible for other people, as what we've said before, but stay away from the PDFs as much as possible, and just sort of imagine if you were someone else with a with an impairment, and just thinking what it would be like for them, and just putting yourself in their shoes, basically. As I say, all the support's there, and we want to reach out to you. So,
Thank you all so much.
Thank you, Francesca.
Thank you. Cheers.
Thank you for listening to this episode of NYCC Me. Hope you enjoyed it. If you want to keep up to date with any new episodes or be part of the D&I conversation more widely, please do join the NYCC Me podcast Yammer page. Hopefully see you next time.